Welcome. Ed Martin here on the Pro America Report. Great to be with you. It's Ed Martin. I got to tell you, I had an interesting phone call today with some folks that are doing work out in Colorado, helping get good issues in on people's radar, whether it's pro-family, pro-life, the Pro-America agenda. You should go over to proamericareport.com, and you'll see there a chance to sign up for my daily email. It's called What You Need to Know. You can get that there. You know, as the head of the Phyllis Schlafly Eagles across the country, I hear from folks everywhere, and I try to collate as much information as I can to get it to you on that email and on the show. So it's great to be with you. I thank you for coming in to listen. And over at proamericareport.com, besides signing up for the Wink, you can also see the standalone links to so many of the great interviews that we do on this program. So head over there, proamericareport.com. All right, a couple things before we get to what you need to know. Today's Wink, I got to preview the Wink for you. The Supreme Court decisions earlier today, they were great. And we're going to talk about both of them in a moment. Really good decisions. 7-2 decisions. The only, I think the two in the minority in this case were Sotomayor and Ginsburg, the very left-leaning, I guess you'd say. The others, everybody else went there in the favor. We'll talk about it in a minute. It's good. It's a relief. Because if you care about the Supreme Court, you've been frustrated by some of the recent decisions by the so-called conservative court, between Chief Justice Roberts making some squirrely decisions and even Justice Gorsuch. But we'll get to that in a moment. I want to give you a brief update on China. You've heard me talk about China a lot. I had planned on my webinar earlier today. It's at 1 o'clock East Coast time. I do a 1-hour webinar over at phyllisschlafly.com. I had planned to talk about Hong Kong and how rapidly the world is losing Hong Kong. Now, my webinar got delayed. I had to go to an important meeting that I can't tell you about yet, but I'll probably be able to tell you about in about a week. It has to do with sort of policy and politics. But I'll be doing that next week, on next Wednesday, a webinar. It's called The Problem of Communist China, Our Second Cold War, and we'll be updating on Hong Kong. But the news today, which I think is really good news, and it could be breaking any moment, by the way. I've been sort of watching to see, because earlier today, may have been an interview that was late last night. I think he's traveling. But Secretary of State Pompeo, he said that I don't want to get ahead of the president, but we're looking closely at the problem of TikTok. And whether TikTok has been violating is inappropriate because it's Chinese controlled and dominated, and they're using it for. So he said that when someone like Pompeo says that he doesn't want to get ahead of the president, he's usually saying there's a decision been made or it's being made, and therefore we can kind of go that direction. Good news. But here's the question. Here's the funny thing. Not a funny thing. Here's the amazing thing. Do you know how long TikTok's been around? I don't know. Maybe it's been around for years and only now accelerated. But my goodness, it's been in about the last 4 months. It's accelerated in its use. And I have people over the 4th of July weekend. We had some family friends come by. Hadn't seen them in about 18 months. They were in from out of town. And the 16-year-old daughter, she said she's on TikTok all the time. And I said, when did you start? And she said, I don't know, 6 months ago. And she's all the time, all her friends, everybody's on there. It's amazing. And the Chinese government's gathering data, and they're not being fair. And we've been talking about the march on Hong Kong. So good for the administration to get to this point of banning TikTok. We'll see how well or quickly that happens. You know, a lot of things can sound good, and we'll see what happens as we go through. So, all right, but let's get to what you need to know today. I want to talk. This is very important. Earlier today, there were 2 decisions delivered by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court delivered 2 decisions, each very important, very important decisions about religious liberty and our future. Now, I want to walk through them because they're really important, and I want to tell you about them. But I also want to make this observation first. Many years ago, I worked on what I call rights of conscience cases as a lawyer. You know, I'm a lawyer too. And I helped owners of pharmacies and pharmacists themselves who were being forced in Illinois by Rod Blagojevich, then the governor. They were being forced to participate in dispensing abortifacients and contraceptives. And they didn't want to do that. And they thought they had a right of conscience. So I litigated those cases. And I was proud to do it. And I think we have a great tradition in this country of fighting back on conscience, and we should, religious liberty. But I also came to think that that those fights were really quite They were really sort of felt like you were retreating. You were retreating to a space where you were saying, "Hey, we believe in we want our protection for our rights of conscience. We know you're stomping all over our culture, and we know it's kind of. It feels like you're sort of retreating. I'm not describing this too well, but it feels like you're sort of putting up an argument about what you won't let the culture and the government do to you as you're backing up, instead of being proactive. And these two cases today are two more protections. It's really good. One of them is called the Little Sisters of the Poor versus Pennsylvania, and the other one is Our Lady of Guadalupe School versus Morrissey, I think. And both decisions, one, the Little Sisters written by Thomas, and the Guadalupe School written by Alito, and they both were basically saying you have the right to your conscience, and it doesn't just mean freedom of worship. It's not just that you go to church on Sunday or to the synagogue on the Sabbath and that's it. No, it can inform your life sufficient that you can't be the nuns, the Little Sisters of the Poor, and told that under Obamacare you must pay for a contraceptive mandate because you're not going to use it and you object to it on principle, on your religious principle. Or the Little Sisters of the Poor School, you can't. Your First Amendment freedom of religion doesn't stop at the name on the door. You're allowed to say, hey, we want our employees to have a certain set of positions. If they change those positions, or if they don't agree with them, we can take action to protect the integrity of our place. That's the tradition. Both of these decisions show the importance of having clear law that protects that. It gives cover to us as we the people to feel like we know we can stand up. Now, there are two problems with the current culture. One is people are not allowed to speak up and not allowed to live their life because there are intrusions of the law, that there are local or state or federal impositions of the law, things that stop them from living out their informed, conscientious life. That's real. Not as common as you'd think, but it's real. But the bigger one I'd say to you, and this is what you need to know today, is there's a lot of people that there may not be a legal prohibition on you living your life, but there's a cultural one. It's being shoved down your throat. You can't speak ill of LGBTQ. You cannot say what you believe about the T of LGBTQ. Transgender, for example. You cannot assert live your life and according to your conscience. I'm saying this, by the way, I'm saying it culturally. You're made to feel bad. You're made to be intimidated. You end up self-censoring. And what you need to know today is that we have to be willing to acknowledge the success in the law. It's a pretty great success. And then we have to be willing to move ourselves out and not just worry about the law, but worry about the culture. And that the time for self-censorship and for the cancel culture crippling us, it has to pass. Now, I'm in a privileged position in a way, I guess. I guess I could be canceled anytime if I say something wrong and the free speech folks come in. I did lose a job. It wasn't my main job. It was a side gig at CNN because I spoke the truth, and they immediately let me go because the pressure from the African-American folks at CNN who were really racist. They were racially based commentators, and they complained. So I guess I could say that, actually. That's real for me. But in general, my work is insulated, so my job is to talk and lean into this problem. But the question I have, and what you need to know, is if it's true we're getting legal protection, good. Is it true that we're getting cultural protection? Is it true that we can say and be who we want to be in our culture? Or are we gaining legal protection but losing practical protection? More and more, you're seeing people say, well, I'm not going to discriminate against minorities, but I will discriminate against the majorities. Here's who we think the majority is: whites or males or whoever. This is a really challenging time, and what I think we all need to know is it's time to understand, yes, our Constitution and our law protects the freedom of our conscience, the freedom to live who we want to live, whether it's with the Little Sisters of the Poor, which is religious communities and religious conscience around what we believe, or in the case of the Guadalupe School, our schools and our not just the church, but our schools and related services can also have that religious conviction. But forget what the law is for a minute and ask yourself if we are able to assert our way of life in this culture. It's not as clear, is it? All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we got great interviews today. John Schlafly will be with us, but also our old friend, Janet Porter. She's got a book out about the heartbeat bill. We'll talk with Janet Porter, too, today. We'll talk with her, too, also today. Great to be with you. Ed Martin here on the Pro America Report. Be back in a moment.